This is section 2.5, solving equations involving absolute value. So first we're going to do a couple expressions just to get our brains working and remember what absolute value is. So evaluating these expressions with absolute value, remember absolute value is the distance from 0. Okay, so distance is always positive. So for example, the absolute value of 3 is 3, because 3 is 3 away from 0. The absolute value of negative 3 is also 3, because negative 3 is 3 away from 0. So just keep that in mind. So when we're evaluating expressions, they told us a value for our variable, so we need to substitute that in. And then we can evaluate. So we're going to use our order of operations. Absolute values are just like parentheses. Those are going to come first. Those are our grouping symbols. So we have absolute value of 10. So just be careful your absolute values and your ones don't get mixed up. Absolute value of 10 is 10. And 10 minus 14 is negative 4. So go ahead and try example 2. Alright, let's see how you did. They gave us a value for x, so we're going to substitute that in. So 4 times 2, since it's right next to our x value. So again, absolute value are grouping symbols, so we need to do the inside of those first. So in here we have subtraction and multiplication. Remember, in our order of operations, multiplication comes first. So 4 times 2 is 8. Now we have to simplify the 3 minus the 8 and we get negative 5. Absolute value though of negative 5, so the 23 minus just keeps coming down. Absolute value comes first. We can't distribute that negative into the absolute value, so we need to take the absolute value of negative 5 and get 5. So it's 23 minus 5, which is 18. Okay. So that's evaluating expressions. So just remember, absolute value should be a positive number because distance is positive. So if we look at this first example in solving equations, we have the absolute value of something equals 17. So that's saying the distance from 0 is 17. Well, there's two numbers that are 17 away from 0. 17 is 17 away from 0, and negative 17 is also that far away from 0. So the inside of the absolute value here could equal 17, or it could equal negative 17. And we have to solve both of those equations. So once we get that part, the solving of equations isn't too bad. We can add the 5 on both sides of our equation and get f equals 22. We can also do that on the second equation. Add the 5, and we get f equals negative 12. Now you can check your answers just like in solving regular equations. So let's try that. If I put 22 in here, I get 22 minus 5 equals 17. Well, 22 minus 5 is 17. Is the absolute value of 17 17? Yes. If I put negative 12 in here, I get negative 17. Is the absolute value of negative 17 17? Yes. So we know that we did that correctly. And 22 and negative 12 are my two answers. Now remember, absolute value though is distance from 0, so it should be a positive number like here with the 17. So in this next example, it's saying the distance from 0 is a negative number. Well, that's not possible, and this absolute value is by itself, and absolute value should equal a positive. So right off the bat, I get no solution. However, let's say that you didn't see that it was a negative 3, and so you're like, oh, I'm going to say b minus 1 equals negative 3, and b minus 1 equals positive 3. Well, first off, it should have been a cue here that your first one was negative instead of your second one. But if I was to solve this, I get negative 2 and 4. Now checking my equation, if I put negative 2 in here, is the absolute value of negative 3 negative 3? No. The absolute value of negative 3 should be positive 3. So I know that answer is not correct. And if I put 4 minus 1 in here, I get 3. Is the absolute value of 3 negative 3? No. Again, it should be positive 3. So if that would have been a positive 3 here, then our answers would have been negative 2 and 4. But because absolute value again cannot equal a negative, our answer is no solution. I would like you to pause the video and try these two problems. Alright, let's see how we did. So we have absolute value of something equals 4. So that means the distance from 0 is 4, so our 4 and negative 4 are both that far away from 0. So we need to do both equations. Y plus 2 equals 4, and y plus 2 equals negative 4. Solve. Let's get the y by itself, and we get y equals 2. Again, subtracting 2 from both sides, we get y equals negative 6. So you could check 2 plus 2 is 4, absolute value is 4, negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4, but absolute value again makes that positive 4. So those are my two answers. On this next one, just a little bit longer problem, but same idea, distance is 2. So my inside of my absolute value could equal 2 or negative 2, because when you take the absolute value of those, you get 2. So now I just need to solve this. So getting the 3n by itself, I need to add the 4 over to the other side. And I get 3n equals 6. Last step, divide by 3, and I get n equals 3. The other equation, again, you're adding 4. So you get 3n equals 2. Divide by 3, and n is 2/3. Now please do not write that as a decimal, it's 0.6 repeating, but we should leave things as fractions. Again, you can check and make sure you did it correctly by substituting that back in. Okay, but that's all there is to solving with absolute value. Make sure you set up both equations, because there's two numbers, that distance from 0, but if the absolute value equals a negative to start with, watch that, that's no solution.